What's happened to Leslie?
Haha. Hello, and welcome to League of Women Voters ABC's November meeting. This month, we are pleased to have Rebecca Ebnet-Desens from the Anoka County Historical Society, and she's going to tell us some about what the society does and talk to us about the power of our own personal history. But first, we are going to give her an award. So I'm very pleased, on behalf of League of Women Voters ABC, to present to Rebecca, who's sitting down behind me, the Friend of League Award for 2022. And I do have a little speech prepared here, so you'll have to bear with it. With appreciation and recognition for outstanding partnership with League of Women Voters ABC to celebrate the history of women's suffrage and honor the accomplishments of Anoka County women, for guidance, research, composition, editing, and design of the publication 100 Years Strong, League of Women Voters of Minnesota, 1919 to 2019. And I will say that all our members who get one today, who are here today, will get a free copy, but you can also buy your own copies at the Anoka County Historical Society. For sharing expertise, staff resources, and exhibit space to educate, commemorate, and create public awareness of the role of League of Women Voters in civic education, community service, and motivating voter participation. For highlighting the contributions of local veterans, local businesses and their employees, Anoka County Sheriff's Department, and other groups to the community and beyond. For the leadership provided to gather, preserve, and share the history and stories of all the people and communities in Anoka County, in classrooms, in the museum, at community events, and working with individuals to conduct oral histories. Currently, there's a great exhibit on the history of federal cartridge at their facility in Anoka. Several years ago, they did a wonderful exhibit on local Vietnam veterans. So for all this, we are grateful to Rebecca Ebnet-Desens and the staff of the Anoka County Historical Society, and we present her with this Friend of League Award for 2022. So this is the award, and we are very happy to give it to you. So thank you. Hold it up. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I would tell people, as in past membership meetings, questions can be asked by using the chat function in Zoom and also the index cards here in the meeting. Rebecca Ebnet-Desens, Executive Director of the Anoka County Historical Society, is a true Renaissance woman with skills in creative writing, photography, nonprofit management, and disability advocacy. Rebecca's presentation suggests we must think about our legacy as we are writing it every day. Okay, Rebecca, you're on.
No pressure. Truly, thank you for everybody from the League of Women Voters and Gretchen and everything that you've done for us as an organization as well, the partnership that you've all had with us over the last couple of years, the work that you've put into your own history, the time and effort that you've spent collecting it and editing it and working with us on it. It's been a fantastic partnership to have and to enjoy. And one that we can hopefully model for other organizations moving forward to say, they did it, so can you. So I do truly appreciate everybody's help in that. And we will find a wonderful place for the award in the museum and show off that original artwork and the sentiment of partnership. So again, thank you so much. The Anoka County Historical Society is a 501c3 nonprofit that relies on donations from individuals, businesses, government entities, and that's what keeps us solvent and happy in the world. Our mission is to gather, preserve, and share the stories of all people and communities that are part of Anoka County. We're an inclusive organization accountable for presenting and celebrating both the told and untold stories of Anoka County. We invite people to join us on this journey to ignite curiosity about the past and to understand our shared experiences. So we accomplish this through programs, collecting physical items, maintaining an online presence with our website and social media, creating our podcast, History 21, the exhibit hall, and special grant-funded projects. I'll tell you more about ACHS as an organization, but first, I want to tell you a little bit more about why we're an organization. I want to do this by telling you a story. So once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there stood a castle. And in that castle was a beautiful princess named Arabella. Arabella was actually kind of a goofball and acted a little bit more like this around her friends, though. She was the youngest and only surviving sibling from her family, as they had all unfortunately met their demise in the Great Dragon Hunt of 76. As time passed, Arabella got older and older until she too passed away. More time passed, and Arabella's friends gathered to begin taking care of her estate. As they perused the great hall, they admired the portraits on the wall, as they had for so many years. One commented on how cute Arabella's sister Sophie looked, only to be corrected that, no, that portrait was actually Glenda. No, said another, that is actually Wanda. Surely that's Wanda. Alas, Arabella had not labeled her paintings. Arabella's friends moved on to the vault to retrieve some papers for the lawyer, but realized that none of them had the key. They had made some tea and waited for the locksmith. When the door finally opened, they began to sort through drawers and boxes of papers, trinkets, letters, theater tickets, but couldn't find the abstract to the castle anywhere. What they did find, however, was a birth certificate for Buella Eunice Arabella Jones. Now, all this time, nobody had known she had a different first name. The friends, now realizing how little they knew about Buella, sank into their chairs. One of them rubbed the faded arm of Arabella's favorite reading chair in the sunshine. All these things, we don't know the stories. What shall we do? Suddenly, the door burst open, and in strode a gallant knight wielding sharpened pencils. Never fear, he roared. Sir Thinks-a-Lot is here. Well, my name's really John, and I'm a distant cousin who lives in Italy, but I did some genealogy work a few years ago. That might help. The friends cheered. But first, could you stop sitting in that chair? John said. He pointed to the one in the sunshine. Actually, that's our great uncle's coronation chair, the only one that survived the dragons. The end. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we're all Arabella, how we've all been her friends, and what that means to our families, our communities, and our heritage institutions. I'm going to admit I'm a little bit of the Arabella. You know the plumber with the leaky toilet and the electrician that has the bad wiring? Right here, folks. So I began my career in journalism and creative writing because it gave me an excuse to ask a lot of questions and get paid for being nosy. And I worked with some newspapers and magazines for a few years, and then I began to realize that in order to write about the present, every situation needed context. And I found myself exploring the past to tell the story of the present, all while leaving a record for the future. Keep in mind, I hated history in high school. I hated memorizing the dates and the battle movements and who was on which side of which argument and how that created an event. But I came to understand history is just a collection of stories. And from those we can learn, and journalism can be adapted to asking dead people questions. We just need to call it research so it doesn't sound weird. So a little bit about me and my debacle of family history. This is a photo from the Stearns County History Center archive. As a researcher, I came across photos like this all the time. If you'll notice, the first name on the bottom is Mike Ebnet. You'll realize this is a group of wayward cousins of mine. There's not a lot of Ebnets around. Thank goodness. This is a great example that no family is perfect in their personal preservation methods, historians included. But if you look at this photo, you'll see men in uniforms that we can recognize as the game of baseball. The bats don't hurt either. That's a good clue. And there's a date, 1947, in the corner. Then there's a stack of names. So the question is it Mike Ebnet John or Mike Ebnet and John? And then we have Vernon. Butch is in quotes, leading us to assume it's a nickname, probably for Leroy, which immediately follows since it looks like the dashes are separating the names. The asterisk must have meant something to someone, but the key has long since disappeared. So I'm assuming the first line of names relates to the back row of men, but only because Lloyd the Bat Boy is a single name in a row unto himself. Now, since this is my family, I know they're all Ebnets. No family resemblance there, right? Okay. I also know that the Albany boys played against the Holdingford boys, so those are the ones with the H on the jersey. Now, I'm not sure what Mr. Waite Park is doing in the corner there. I personally don't have a coronation chair, but I do have a few precious items that have been handed down through my family, one of which is my mom's Cinderella watch that she wore as a child. She grew up in England. She gave it to me when I was little and let me wear it for special occasions, and then it got tucked away in my jewelry box where it still sits. The other item is a quilt that my grandma made me in high school, and I've used it ever since, and it's starting to show quite a bit of wear, plenty of fading, but the stitches seem to be holding together pretty decent. So I've made the decision to use the quilt while I can, to enjoy curling up with my grandma's memory during the years since she's passed away. But because of this decision, the quilt isn't in as great a shape as it could be, much like Arabella's chair, but it's being enjoyed because of my decision. So at the History Center, our job is to help you preserve your memories and heirlooms as you see best for your family. If this involves glass display cases, great. If it means using a dining room table until it's loved to death, so be it. As long as you make a conscious decision about how and what to leave, that's okay. We get upset when families accidentally hurt artifacts they meant to preserve, like when they use the sticky album pages from the 80s, or tape. So tape is a 4-letter word in the museum. Very bad. So I was cleaning out the garage a few years ago, and I opened yet one more box of stuff. And I found yet one more diary I had kept. This one, however, I had started when my daughter was only 3. And so instead of writing about my day, I wrote about her day. And I noted things like she could say yogurt instead of yogurt, and how she discovered something curious between her toes. She actually said that, I'm not making it up. And so I sat and I read the whole thing, and I was amazed. First, because I had completely forgotten the book existed, and secondly, because nearly everything in it I had also forgotten. But as soon as I sat down and read the journal and it jogged my memory, everything came back, and I remembered every moment of that journal. But otherwise, without it, it would have been gone. And I learned a really valuable lesson, that much like the friends of our princess earlier, it's certainly much more easy to tell a story when you have the details to make a good one. So what does that mean for us today? For your family, it means knowing who you are and where you came from. It means knowing you as a person, not just as a parent or an aunt or a cousin. It means medical history. It means pride in personal relationships, successes, failures, and growth. It means being capable of seeing the generations change from farmers to white-collar workers and back again, from immigrants to citizens. It means that experiences can be cherished, valued, relived, or copied. But it also means work. You might be in the process of cleaning out your home right now. Many, many years of stuff. You might be eager to shift to a small apartment, maybe a townhome. You might be doing the same thing for a parent. Your children might be the ones helping you move. And maybe you're not so eager to do it. And if either of these things sound familiar, fear not. The biggest thing to remember through any clean-out process is that things must be tossed. But achieving this goal in a compassionate and understanding manner is vital. So how do you decide whether the broken Christmas tree ornament in your hand is a gift from a dear friend who passed away, or maybe it's just a broken Christmas tree ornament? That's something that only you know about. And that's the power of personal history. For the community, sharing your story means helping to create, or in sometimes cases maintain, a sense of identity. So when you hear the word Anoka, you think of rivers and logging. When you hear Centerville, it's archaeology and French heritage. Coon Rapids and Blaine, their identity is a little bit newer because of the suburban tract housing of the 1950s and 60s. The role that you have played in your community, have you been a lifelong teacher? Did you serve on the fire department or a group like the Lions? Do you belong to the veterans clubs, sewing clubs, churches, swim clubs, country clubs, historical societies? Did you build your house, or does it have its own history that you've blended with it? Did you work inside or outside the county? How do you think that changed your view of the neighborhood? Answers to questions like these will help you decide who's invested in your story and where they're invested, and what stuff you can keep to tell that story. So unfortunately, not all your personal items can be saved. Things are going to have to go to Goodwill. They're going to have to be donated, maybe to a museum. They're going to have to be sold on eBay, but maybe take some photos of the stuff before it goes away. You know, maybe that collection of China birds that you've got sitting up, take some photos of those. You know, you don't, maybe take one with you. Doesn't all have to hit the trash can. The term heritage institution is used to include archives, galleries, libraries, and museums, organizations that house and collect information about the lifestyle of its citizens to tell a larger story from a personal standpoint. For instance, the Anoka County Historical Society has a room full of boxes that contains everything from uniforms to dolls and car engines and squad lights. The point of each item, whether it's a tiny glass bottle from the Vite distribution that was downtown, maybe the Grossline delivery truck itself. The point is to preserve them in the story. Secondly, it's to make it accessible to the public if they ask to see it. We encourage that. And third, it's to use the item as a teaching tool. So the VIRAC engine and the blueprints that we have for building a car are simply fun to see. But if we use the story of the VIRAC company in Anoka to show how Ford's ability to cut its prices and sell their vehicles on a larger scale impacted an up-and-coming local business, then we have a very relatable story that people can understand yet today. So I know what you're thinking. I didn't invent the car. My stuff isn't that cool. You're wrong. A lot of what we have in the collection are simply family objects that just come with a really great story. We have phone bills from the 1920s, an entire decade of phone bills. It shows the growth of the phone industry until the Depression. We have a letter jacket from high school. We have toddler shoes. We have toys, phones, clothing, jewelry, you name it. One of our wedding dresses came with a story of the bride planning her wedding during World War II. And the groom was going to be coming home on leave. Pretty typical story, until we found out that because it was World War II, there wasn't enough fabric for her to make dresses for her bridesmaids. Turns out that all of her bridesmaids showed up in their wedding dresses, and that's what they wore at her wedding. As we told that story in the exhibit hall, in come the families of the women who had worn those dresses, and soon we have a whole bridal party's worth of dresses with a very unique story. So for a long time, museums and libraries have been known as institutions with a capital I of learning, capital L, and it's all been very academic, and it's been very boring. And we've collected and we've disseminated information in a way that has been very top-down and has been very inaccessible to a lot of people. So we put things in cases, we put things in boxes, we label things, We still do all of the typical museum things, fear not. We don't want the public touching anything. We have signs up. But it still seems unapproachable and irrelevant sometimes when you're talking about old things. Aha. Fear not. We're not going to get rid of the exhibit hall. We love putting things on display. We love people coming in and seeing them. We love telling those stories. But the museum is an active, fun, creative place, and we welcome children and adults to explore worlds that they don't know much about. We had an after-school program at one point that got so large we had to close it down because we just couldn't figure out how to include everybody. We had a teen council before COVID hit that met twice a month, and they came in and they created doodle pages and talked about their 2 weeks and what felt important to them. They went on to be volunteers of ours, and one of them now serves on our board of directors. We have an ever-growing ghost tour experience that this year raised over $21,000 for the museum. We host the Anoka Ambassadors, a funeral every now and again, 300 people for Riverfest every year. We tour the county and appear at summer festivals. We don costumes and bring the Civil War and characters like Mary Woodbury to life. And through it all, people hear the stories like yours. We're quirky when we tell the story of the county's oldest pickle, or we shine a light on a piece of skull from one Dr. Giddings, who he made into a watch fob. You can hear those stories on our podcast. We're serious when we tell the story of veteran families in partnership with TPT, or the murder of the Wise family in Grow Township, which we filmed and produced on our own, thank you, in-house. We received Minnesota History Awards for all of those. So lots of people contact us for research projects, especially about their homes and properties. The easiest thing we can say to them is give us your abstract, please. Nobody throw away your abstracts. But museums and libraries are also using stories like yours from the community to fill gaps and provide context for other people. This is a fundraising dinner we hosted several years ago honoring Natalie Haas-Steffen. She was one of the first female county commissioners in Anoka County. And the guests, even Ted Mondale there, needed to use history to tell about the world that they were living in and how they worked through it and how they worked in it and how Natalie affected the community. This entire evening was remembering her accomplishments and celebrating the lives she touched over decades. We conducted an oral history with her, collected her photos for display, received a few more for preservation, and then recorded the evening as a capstone. We go to ribbon cuttings with Chamber of Commerce and remind them to take pictures of the inside of their businesses. We have a lot of pictures of Main Street, and we have a lot of pictures of the storefronts. Very rarely do we have pictures of the inside of the businesses, let alone the employees. We host storytelling workshops. One of the latest ones we did with Mary Jo Peel. And so that we don't sound like a broken record all the time, constantly saying your story is important. Speaking of history, that expression is going to be long gone here pretty soon, the broken record one. Stay with me, people. So one of our jobs is to hear the stories, sometimes just stopping into the museum and having a casual conversation helps inform us and gives us information so that we can help somebody else. We tell the stories, whether it's on our podcast, whether it's on our website, whether it's through newspaper articles. And then we become the story. How do you see yourself? Answering that question will go a long way towards what you will save, as well as where you'll save it and whom you will save it with. Your legacy is in your hands, quite literally, but it's also in your head and in your house. So I hope you have some new ideas that you didn't have before this, and maybe some more energy that would help look through these big jobs that you have ahead of you, because now you have homework. But if you need a little help, that's our job. So we hope to see you at the museum soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, and we'll start out with some questions from the audience. Tell us about your journey to being an executive director for the society.
how much time do you have? Moving from the journalism and the writing into history, there was a pit stop at a historic house along the way, and that gave me the experience of being the only person there. So I had to do all of the research, I had to do the tours, I had to do the programming, I had to do all the grant writing, I had to do all of the finances, it was the whole bag. And those skills, plus the journalism skills, transfer very well into running a larger institution with an amazing staff. And so I would be completely remiss if I didn't give most of the credit to the staff and the board of directors, because they are truly amazing people. And I am but one person, but they have gone out of their way, especially through COVID, to learn new skills and take what they do know and their own passions and translate it forward into the society that we have today.
Okay. Question number 2 from the audience. How do you interact or connect with the Minnesota Historical Society?
We pay a yearly membership to be members of the Minnesota Historical Society. We apply for grants through their organization, through the legacy funds. We call them when we have questions about historic properties, the SHPO department. Most recently, we've begun meeting with Kent Whitworth, who's the director of the Minnesota Historical Society, and having lunch with him as part of a cohort of the Ramsey, Hennepin, and Dakota County Historical Societies. We've managed to create a space to be heard, which is very unique for a county historical society with our local city suburban friends. So I think the relationship between us and the Minnesota Historical Society will only continue to grow in the future.
Okay, this is a question from the chat. This is from Gretchen. My husband and I, just a minute, I lost it. Here we go. My husband and I are cataloging the stuff we were told by our parents. They said would be valuable someday. There are sets of crystal and china, untold numbers of statues and vases, old paintings, etc. This sounds familiar. This stuff came from Ohio and Pennsylvania, no local history, and our kids, my kids do the same thing, just roll their eyes when we ask them what they want from this marvelous hoard. With no known story to go with these, would they have historical value just by being old? And how do we assess all of this? Tough.
Because my memory is horrible, I'm going to start from the back end of the question and work the other way.
Okay.
If any of your items have artistic value or antique value, you need to talk with a proper person who knows these things. We legally can't give you a value for your items, nor would I want to try to even make a guess at this. I wouldn't want that job. So if you can find someone in the field to tell you whether those items specifically have monetary value on something like an auction site or an eBay or something higher level than a yard sale, for instance. Sometimes, the Antiques Roadshow, you do come up with some fantastic things that might just be living in your attic. You never know what's in there. So from a strictly financial sense, definitely talk to a professional in that capacity. One of the hard things about generational wealth is that it accumulates. And that is a gift as well as the problem with generational wealth, whether it's money or whether it's stuff. And so when, particularly in my family, for instance, they came over from Germany, they came over from England with literally nothing, and they built things up, and they handed off some stuff, and they kept the stuff, and they built up more stuff, and they added to the stuff. And so it snowballs, right? And so your family has all of a sudden 3 households worth of stuff, And you can't keep it all. And especially now, I think the pendulum is swinging back on the youth of today. Like, my daughter is 21. She has no interest in crystal and glass. It's not the decoration she likes. It's not the stuff factor she likes. She's willing to put everything in a car and drive away. Thank you very much. She doesn't need the stuff. Whereas myself, I think possibly because I was raised by parents who had been raised by people who were depression people, you kept everything, especially the broken things, because you never know when the broken things were going to, you could find that glue. You know, you kept everything, right? And you take care of your things. So when I was a child and my cousins would come over, and they were raised in their family was a daycare, like their mom was a daycare, and I would purposely pack away all my favorite toys when they came, because they were used to 15 kids being in their house using all of their toys. And it didn't matter to them if their Barbie's hair got tangled up, and it mattered to me if my Barbie's hair got tangled up. Thank you very much. So when Eileen decided that she wanted to have her 6-month window of playing with Barbies, I gave her my box of Barbies, but her grandmother also gave her new Barbies. And suddenly we have way too many Barbies, right? Because I took care of my things. So if you have a family that takes care of their things, and you have this amazing, it sounds like art gallery that I would love to live in, thank you, you have a problem. There's no way around it. You could contact the historical societies from where the parents originally came and see if they would like anything, even as a donation for them to sell it to continue to run the historical society. That's another option. But yeah, without a story attached to it, it is just a physical item, unfortunately.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Oh, sorry, I do have some more. This is what I was going to ask. What is the county's genealogically society's relationship with the historical society?
We're friends. The Genealogical Society is their own separate organization. They use our address for any mail that might arrive. They have a desk in the back room. They hold meetings in the filer room. But yeah, we're good friends, but we are separate organizations.
Okay. Your organization seems very different than it was years ago. At Colonial Hall in Anoka, is that the big white house? Yeah. What is the Anoka County Historical Society and its museum focused on in 2022?
It's really interesting that you bring up Colonial Hall. I'm going to step back to that. Being in a historic home gives you a certain panache, right? You walk in the door and you feel the house, right? You feel history being there, and that's a real benefit. The downside is that you're trapped in that house, and you're confined by the rooms that it has, and you're confined by the house, right? And the Dr. Aldrich story that is the house, and what it means to be in Anoka, and you're confined as an organization. So one of the reasons that we moved to our current facility on 3rd Avenue there was so that we could expand sideways, right? And we could have an exhibit hall, because you can't do that in an old house. So we have the exhibit hall. We have a research library, which we couldn't have in the old house. We have a storage space, which we couldn't have in the old house. So that's part of the reason that we moved. What we did in 2022 was to try to figure out how best we can use that space post-COVID. Because COVID really allowed us to rethink our organization. It gave us the space for everybody to just be quiet for a couple years. The doors were shut. Nobody needed any physical research. We weren't doing physical programs. We weren't going out and doing festivals. And it gave us the chance to learn new skills and try to configure what it would be like if we had twice as many people working on staff. And that's where we got the video production skills. That's where we got the podcast from. That's where we started increasing our outreach throughout the county, but also the nation and the world. You know, we now have research requests coming in from like Germany. There's a student who was doing a doctoral project on women doctors, ironically, the Doctors Aldrich. And so we have this collection now that's reaching people because of our website that we made, because it's searchable and it's being found by people using Google. So moving forward, what we would love to do is potentially have some offsite storage for the stuff, which would give us a little bit more space in the building. We love being in downtown Anoka because we do the ghost tours from the actual facility. You know, location means a lot. You know, we're not out in the middle of the woods somewhere where people have to drive 20 miles in order to discover us and maybe just trip over us for the day, right? We have a public bathroom, so people come in to use the public bathroom and then they say, oh, there's stuff. Maybe I will stay and look at the stuff. You know, we have air conditioning in the summer and people stop in when they're shopping downtown Anoka and they say, oh, air conditioning. I think I will sit here for a few minutes and enjoy the air conditioning. Oh, you have stuff. Aha. So it's fun to watch people trip over us. It's also fun to have people think we're still at the big white house and get a call from Deb down there saying, hey, I've got another one. They're coming down the avenue towards you. So my fear is if we move too far away, nobody will ever know where we are again.
Okay, you mentioned the ghost tours.
Yeah.
This last question is, what are the plans for ghost tours and cemetery tours in 2023?
Oh, we talked to lots of dead people. So the ghost tours, we're pushing we're just about at our 20th. Next year is going to be our 19th anniversary, so we get to plan for the big 20th anniversary, whatever that looks like. We don't know yet. But this year, as soon as we put up a tour online, it sold out. Within maybe 12 hours, it sold out. It was fantastic. We had 1,500 people that came through the museum physically because they came in 10, 15 minutes ahead of their tour, tripped over the exhibit hall again, and we were able to send these tours out in 15-minute increments. We would love to turn them into Spanish language tours, whether that's live Spanish language, if anybody wants to volunteer as a tour guide speaking Spanish. But we could also do them as a pre-recorded tour, or at least a translated paper tour. We would like to increase the number of tours. You know, we're a little hampered by time. You know, you can only send out a certain number per night. But if we had more tour guides, I would go to the challenge of trying to get as many in a night as possible. The cemetery tours, we used to do them regularly. They were in the fall and they were in the dark, but they weren't supposed to be creepy. They were supposed to be, meet this dead person by their headstone and hear a story. But everyone was tripping over everything because it was dark, and it coincided with ghost tours, so people were going on the cemetery tour expecting people to jump out from behind the tombstone instead of just pleasantly meeting the dead person. So we're going to move those around to the spring. We're going to pick 2 this year. We haven't quite decided which ones we're going to do. We're going to pick a couple cemeteries. We're going to have, like I say, a 10 o'clock tour, a lunch option, and then maybe a 2 o'clock tour. So you can have a 10 o'clock and a lunch. You can have a lunch and a 2 o'clock, or you can just have the tour and skip the lunch. But those are going to be another way that we can engage the not Anoka group throughout the county. I know that's really important to get out there and see other humans, because, you know, you do talk to your neighbors more than making the trip to Grandma's house on the other side of the county. And so that's one of the ways we're going to do some outreach.
Okay, we have another question, and they're rather related. Do you need more space? And the second question is, will you add on to your building?
Well, the city of Anoka owns the building.
Yeah.
So we would have to have a conversation with them if we were to add on to the building and use that vacant lot. Historical societies can always use more space, always, because people are always going to continue to live and die and donate stuff. So the collection we have is as good as it's going to get for now. It's just always going to be bigger unless we get rid of some, and we really don't want to. We like the stuff we have. So in order to be a better historical society, we need to bring in more stuff. We're professional hoarders, you know, we need to bring in the things. And so we need space. In simple steps like installing rolling shelving in the collections would give us at least one more row of shelving instead of having static shelving. So we could make some simple changes within the building that would give us some space. But looking down the road 20 years, it's inevitable that that building is going to be too small. So the option is either an entirely new building, offsite storage to put stuff in so that we can use the rest of the building for other things. Right now we can't take, an entire busload of students and have a program with students because we can only host about 30 at a time. So that's, like I said before, is one of the reasons that we stopped doing those after-school programs. When we first started doing it, we had 20 students sign up and it was fine. And we broke them into 2 groups and we did a few minutes and we swapped them. Everybody left and it was happy. They had so much fun, they told their friends. And soon we had 50. We're like, oh, okay, well, we'll split them into 4 groups. And we'll use every corner of the building that we can. This'll work, sure. And we'll just rotate. And so then they had a great time and then they told their friends. And pretty soon we ended up with 130 students. So the 130 students, a portion of them we took down to the dam and we said, look, photos, dam, let's talk about outside things. Hey, portion of you go over to the post office. Look, photos, let's talk about old things. And then we'll just keep rotating. And that worked great until it snowed. But we need space if we're going to continue to engage the public in a way that we know we can. So that is a debacle at this point.
Okay. I think that's it from questions. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more in the chat. A few years ago, this is from Jerry Nelson. A few years ago, I took pictures of all the things in my house and documented why I value them, who they came from, who gave them to us, etc. I have a notebook of it and gave the kids a memory stick of the file. That's more a statement than anything else. That's a wise thing to do, isn't it?
You are my hero, Jerry. Absolutely my hero. Gold stars all around.
I have friends that have done similar things. I think that's about it. Nothing more from the chat. So thank you very much. Oh.
If I could talk loud enough, when we become, some of us, are the history generation, and in my particular family, there's only 2 of us. And there's so much stuff, yes, remembered, yes, unlabeled. How does a family begin to really address all of that for the younger, besides the history book?
One at a time. Truly. If you look at the whole picture, you're going to be completely overwhelmed.
Yes, that's where I am.
Absolutely overwhelmed. One at a time. Maybe set aside from 10 till noon on Fridays, and that's your time. And walk into whatever room you haven't been in a while and look at a thing you haven't looked at in a while. And say, all right, for these 2 hours, this is what I'm going to think about. What is the thing? Where did it come from? What memories does it mean? What does it bring up in me? What emotions does it bring up in me when I hold it? What does someone need to know about the thing? And then, once that egg timer goes off, you're done and walk away from it. Even if you're in the zone, even if you're but just block off that time. And if you make an appointment with yourself, it gets done a lot easier. And again, I'm my own worst enemy, so don't think I'm doing this. I'm doing a lot of preaching and not a lot of doing here. So we're all in this together. This is definitely a communal community. Oh, wait. But my husband is sitting in the corner there and he's gonna laugh as I say this, but I bought a light box and it's downstairs, and my intention, which was really good for 2 days, was to put the things that I don't need, right? But I've kept because they mean something, because somebody gave it to me, and because it came as a gift, it means something. But it's not something that Eileen's ever gonna want, my daughter. So I put it in the light box and I took a photo of it. I'm like, okay, I can let the physical thing go now because I have the photo. So my intention was to put all of that into a photo book so that I could just sit and flip through the things and maybe write in the margins, a little bit more about what it meant. But to have the photo, but I can get rid of the goofy that's sitting on the wobble ball. I really don't need the wobble ball goofy anymore, let's be realistic. But it means something. So that would be my suggestion, is just don't look at the whole picture.
One other, Centerville has such a historical area as Anoka City, Centerville, Centerville Roads and all that. Is there a relationship between that historical area of Anoka County with this historical? Or is that just adjunct and as people come forward?
I take a lot of pride in the communities, each one having their own historical group. And it might be as small as like Blaine has a couple people that have coffee every now and again and they published a book. It might be something like Centerville Hugo where they get together and they record stories as a group. Maybe it's like Anoka or Coon Rapids where they have an actual commission, a historical commission that does, labeling and does a little bit grander thing. Linwood has a wonderful historical society that does cemetery tours and works with the Grange. So I think every community has interested people. Fridley has their own brick and mortar building. But even places like the fire department in Blaine, right? They had a 75th anniversary a few years ago, and we worked with them to create a database of all of their items. And so they kept the items, but they created a database and they put them in boxes. And we have a copy of the database at the Historical Society for research purposes. Someone walks in the door and says, what do you know about the fire department? We can say, this is what they have, go talk to them. So I think that the changing face of historical societies, we need to realize that we aren't the only thing, that it's okay for other people to house their own stuff, and it's okay for it to be a community effort. And if it's not done pristinely according to academic standards, that's okay, because at least it's getting done somewhere. And if we work together as a team, then I think that's definitely the best way to go. Yeah.
We have a statement also here. Linda Rogers, who is our voter service person here, worked on a family history in Anoka County. It was really cool.
She's also got a podcast episode.
Okay, we've come to the end of the trail here, and thank you so
got
much.
one more hand.
Oh, wait, this is not a good way to do this. Because the Zoom cannot hear.
I could restate the question, would that help?
Yeah.
Franklin Elementary is changing to a different type of school. They have a lot of historical documents at Franklin. Have they contacted you at all to preserve any of those documents?
The question is if Franklin Elementary has contacted us about preserving documents because they're changing the type of school, but they have a lot of historical items. I personally have not heard from them yet, so if you have a contact, that would be fantastic, because it definitely sounds like something we should know about. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're going to try this again. I think that's the end. And so thank you very much, Rebecca.
Thank you.